Hi, folks, and welcome back to Mobility Matters. I'm your host, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the agency of Miami-Dade County charged with overseeing your half penny for sales tax for transportation. Today, we have two amazing guests who have been on the program before, but never together, so it's a whole different dynamic. And I think we're going to have some exciting things to talk about today. So first, I want to welcome Commissioner Raquel Regalado. Commissioner Regalado is the County Commissioner for District 7 in Miami-Dade County. And today she's also wearing the role of outgoing chair for the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, or SFRTA. You may know them as Tri-Rail, right? And that's essentially what you do is you operate Tri-Rail. And
our amazing Executive Director,
along with Commissioner Regalado, is our the community's amazing SFRTA Director, David Dech. David, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you. And so, yeah, today it's all about SFRTA and Tri-Rail and trains and everything associated with that, which is an exciting topic because we may have some news to share with our folks today, right? And I'll let you do that. I'm not going to steal your thunder. But first of all, for those who may not know what SFRTA or Tri-Rail are and do, give us a quick primer, whichever one of you wants to start.
Well, the organization was created to get folks off 95. So really, it was a state-created entity. It happens to chair Tri-Rail, but that is not its only purpose, which is another thing that we try to explain to folks. Like, yes, we're in charge of this commuter rail, but there's a lot of other things that SFRTA could do. But its main mission is this tri-county mobility. And I think we've done an amazing job. Our numbers are wonderful, Dave. So if you want to tell them about our amazing numbers.
Yes. So we, about a year ago when we spoke, we were running about 12,000 passengers a day. Right as we speak, we're routinely high 13,900, low 14,000 riders a day, and we're seeing that climb. And I really expect within the next 6 months to a year that we'll never be talking about pre-COVID numbers again.
Right. And as I recall reading, I mean, that was one of the highest percentage increases in ridership, from like-minded commuter rails.
We are very much among the leaders in the country in ridership recovery. And we think we have a great story to tell. We're putting a quality product out there on the rails, and we invite anybody to come back and come out and give us a ride.
Great. And I know, David, you've been here now, what, a year and a half, you said?
Yes, year and a half. Yeah.
And I know that during that year and a half, you were chairing SFRTA, and it was largely due to your chairmanship that we were lucky enough to land. Dave, but tell us about your year as chair, and what are some of the things you aim to accomplish and what you actually were able to achieve?
So first of all, I love trains. So when I got elected in 2020, I was, I think, the only county commissioner in Miami-Dade County's history that asked for Tri-Rail. Most people were like punished with Tri-Rail. I was like, can I be on Tri-Rail? And they were like, why would anyone?
It's a long way to go for the meetings too.
Yeah, we were like, someone actually wants to be on the Tri-Rail board. So that's how we got started. I really enjoyed the meetings, but I thought that Tri-Rail could be so much more. And I had a lot of issues with the executive director at the time. Obviously, we're going to talk about Miami Central, but Miami Central was already a problem when I got there. And for those of you that don't know, my father was very involved in Miami Central. So I felt now that I'm at the county.
Your father being, for the uninitiated, the former mayor of Miami, Thomas
Regalado. Right. Okay. So my dad was like, why isn't the train in the station? What's going on? So we had a lot of questions about it, and I was happy to serve on the Tri-Rail board. And I just felt like at the time, the culture was very north-centric, right? The majority of the board was really moving in that direction. And honestly, when I looked at the data, the Miami-Dade members were just not showing up. I mean, to your point about how difficult it is to get there, we just weren't really engaged. So we worked with the governor and got some new people on there and really started talking about not just Miami Central, but more of a tri-county kind of look at Tri-Rail. And that's when we started asking questions. And the first one that really kind of blew the place up, was the deferred maintenance, right? So, in government, we always have deferred maintenance. This situation was a little different because usually you don't do maintenance because you don't have money. Tri-Rail had the money to do the maintenance and was just pushing it off year after year after year. So that's really when I got engaged and I was like, this is nonsense. Like, we have to do something. I will say it did get polemic. I'm not going to lie. It got a little polemic. And there was some conflict, which I don't think the Tri-Rail board was really used to. But I mean, compared to Miami-Dade County, totally dialed down, right?
Sure,
But I mean,
sure.
compared to like West Palm, they were like, what is wrong
It's
with
all
this
relevant.
chick? Right?
Whole new level of energy.
Right. It was a different type of energy. But you know, I think folks really started asking important questions, and we were like, well, what is our goal? Do we have a 5-year plan? We didn't have a 5-year plan. They had just gotten used to saying, oh, this month we have more riders than last month, and we hope to have more riders the month after. And that just wasn't enough. So, you know, there were a few tense meetings, and the executive director resigned. And I immediately started a committee to look for a new executive director. And even though it was a little polemic how it happened, you know, we had really good people apply. Dave was one of them, and we all met with him. And I think, you know, the board just wanted a sense of urgency. And when I was thinking about kind of like what I brought to the board was this like sense of urgency. Like, listen, the fact that we've been doing this for like 10 years like this doesn't make it okay. We have all these things we have to do. We really have to up our game. And obviously the relationship with Brightline, what was happening with trains. I mean, when this started like a year and a half ago, it wasn't as popular. Right now, because of Brightline's success in Orlando, because of what's happening in Tampa, we're riding high, right? And we have a great partnership with them. So we started with the deferred maintenance. You know, Dave was great from the beginning. He was like, yes, this is a tough job.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you're going to be driving me crazy. So I was completely honest with him about like how much I was going to be bothering him.
And the great thing about Dave, you're a railroad guy, right? So you knew what you were getting yourself
Well,
yeah.
that's
into,
another thing.
right?
We had a politician, which is, I mean, listen,
Right.
I am a politician, but we needed a railroad guy,
Yeah.
and he was on board for that.
So
And
just remind us where you were before you came to SFRTA and what brought you over.
So I was in Austin, Texas, and I'd been there for about 4.5 years, and it was the railroad. There was a similar situation. You know, they were kind of behind on some projects, had some construction plans and things that they were working on that weren't going as quickly as they thought they should. A friend of mine reached out and called me, so I went to Austin, Texas for a few years, and we got the PTC, the Positive Train Control Project, done under ahead of the guidelines, built 5 passing sidings, and built a new downtown station in about 4 years.
Everything that we needed to do,
Right. Okay.
at Miami Central, so it was a good fit.
And I have a little bit of practice, because before that I spent 23 years in freight railroading, which the railroad's a
CSX,
railroad
right.
with CSX, but that's where you really the sense of urgency is instilled in you. Like
Sure.
it's a lifestyle, and you can't really set that aside. So coming here, it was I think a really good fit. I like to go places that you can fix things. There was no shortage of opportunity here on things that could be improved.
Long list. We had a long list.
And I think that at least my staff has reacted. We started with some small victories. We were talking earlier. We started with some small victories, getting the overhauls of the Brookville locomotives signed, starting a cleanup effort around the trains and around the tracks and everything else. And as we progressed and as we started seeing some of these victories, the more and more my staff bought in. And now, instead of them expecting things to take a long time, now they're looking for ways to trim time off this. And this is where we need to be culturally.
Sense of urgency. There you
Yes,
go.
yeah, and really focus on the customer experience, right? So we started with the basics, which was the safety. So obviously Dave tackled like the safety piece first, because we had a lot of issues with that, and then we went into, well, let's do a survey. Let's talk to people about what they want to see. What is the experience that they're having on Tri-Rail, and how can we make that better? We just had the big rollout of our wraps. We've really been able to change the dynamic. We're not Brightline. We don't want to be Brightline. We have a great relationship with Brightline. We're commuter rail. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't have a wonderful experience on Tri-Rail at a very low cost. And that's kind of what we focused on. Like, hey, we can provide you, with this opportunity. And of course, something that is near and dear to your heart, first and last mile.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time on first and last mile. Obviously I've been pushing for the scooters and the bicycles, and Dave has good news on that, because people are actually using scooters.
We are
bicycles.
seeing such an increase in scooters and bikes. We're just trying to get them to quit bringing their own. Like, we need to get set up where we can have bike share and scooter share around the stations, and not necessarily have all of them
We're
on the
working on
train.
that, but obviously we have multi-jurisdictional issues that hold us up. But really, and we have such a great relationship with FDOT. I'm not the chair anymore. I stay on the board, but the board did select me to negotiate the next contract with FDOT. So that's going to be interesting. You know, we have Stacy on the board. We had a great FDOT representative before, but you know, one of the things that we've been able to do is really sit down with FDOT and focus on what we can do as partners. And Purdue has been a great part of that. He is a railroad guy, so it helps. So the whole, I think there's been a series of things that have fallen into place. The Bright Line success, you know, Purdue coming from Sunrail, FDOT wanting to focus on Sunrail, us having Miami Central, us wanting to really focus on expanding. We're moving forward on the Coastal Link. You know, one of the things that we did that Dave was great about was I said, well, when I become the chair, I want to kind of take this party on the road. So we had our first Miami-Dade meeting ever, and you were there. We had our first Broward meeting ever, and we actually took it, you know, to West Palm, you know, to their commission chamber. And following those meetings and those interactions, we talked about the Coastal Link, but we also talked about really engaging with our partners, and we created these subcommittees that now, you know, our partners have named their staff to. You know, Tri-Rail is not something that you hear about once a year at budget time. Now you're actually actively engaged with us, and what we're moving towards is connectivity with these transit systems. Right. So we're all on board for the one ticket ride, you know, and that's going to be a great tri-county like game changer. But now we're working on us doing our first and last mile, and then working with them in terms of connecting their systems to our systems, and having their staff that are putting in these applications and doing that work in with our staff. And then also there's a transit-oriented development. So those had been baking forever, you know. We actually brought one back and we like amped it up. And I think we're the better for it. You know, we spent a lot of time negotiating that, but you know, how can we take these properties and turn them into like a live, work, play and capture those folks so that they ride the train?
Is it the state that owns the properties? Is it SFRTA? How does that work? And how much property do you have around each station generally? Or
it depends on the station.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Let's stick to Miami-Dade County. So, you know, do we have TOD opportunities at these stations?
Only in Hialeah, and it's very small, you know, so we would have to partner with someone else, but we are looking at it, you know.
There's several properties that are not connected, so we have to figure out, you know, unique ways to leverage those.
But what I did is I did add the existing Tri-Rail properties to the RTZ when we did the RTZ. So at least there's that conversation.
The RTZ is?
The Rapid Transit Zone, right. So another long fought issue at Miami-Dade County that I worked on with our chairman, Oliver Gilbert. And listen, it's really brought a lot of development to the corridor. And, you know, one of the things that I've talked about on the Tri-Rail board is how the RTZ has benefited my district and the development that we have at the Metro Rail stations, where 68% of the people that live there do not own cars and are using the public transit that's directly adjacent. So that's what we would love to see at Tri-Rail. And one of the things that happened during the pandemic that I think, you know, to Dave's earlier point about ridership is we have a lot of people that move to West Palm, that move to Broward, you know, or that live in Broward and are working in Miami-Dade, or live in Miami-Dade or are working in Broward. So, and they're not doing it every day. Sometimes they're doing it every other day, but they really have gotten used to using the train and enjoying the time of that transit as opposed to sticking in like gridlock. So,
which is why the customer experience is so important, because at the end of the day, you're trying to attract what we call choice riders in the industry, right? Yes, you need to serve the population that absolutely needs to use transit and maybe can't afford a car. But to be successful, you want to attract those people who have the choice and choose transit, choose to take Tri-Rail.
It's everything.
And customer experience is everything.
It's everything. And that, you know, right out of the gate, you know, we set out to improve that. And we have a long way to go. Like I can look back and say we're better than we were a year and a half ago. You know, I kind of walked
eons better than you don't have a good day. Thank you. Yes.
He's humble.
And well, no, it's you know, I come from a place where good enough is never good enough.
Right.
And as we start to make improvements, there's other things that we can find. There's always ways to get better. I think we're in just such a perfect time right here in South Florida. Because I mean, if I didn't grow up paying attention to mass transit. I was a railroad guy. That's you know, but after the last few years, I started paying attention. You know, and when you look at the discussions around South Florida, there's no debate about whether or not there needs to be more mass transit, which we used to have.
Yeah,
now we're arguing about the flavor.
Yeah.
Right? Is it rail? Is it bus? Is it what a great place to be?
Yeah.
Where we've gone through that maturation process of understanding that it's not whether or not we need it, it's what type we need.
And there's a new generation too. And I've talked to the board about this, and we've had some changes on the board. I think we have some younger people on the board too, which kind of like helps. But, my son uses public transit every day, to go from my house, to Miami-Dade Kendall campus. This is like an Uber generation.
Yeah.
They don't
want to own a car. They're not applying for driver's licenses.
Right. At 16, we were like outside the DMV, right? Like,
Camping
I
out.
want my test. My kids are like, what are you talking about? So it's a different generation. They have their scooters, they have their bicycles, they'll just call a car if it's raining. So there's a huge opportunity there. But, to Dave's point, kind of like what comes next, like we've been working on the pedestrian bridges, which have been very painful, but we're almost done with that. We're working with FDOT to see about doing concessions, in our stations. Again, we're not Brightline, but we could do some of that and work with our partners to do that. We've promised some of our members murals. We need some Instagram moments inside our stations.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but we need to do the rock. We need to do the rock first.
Yeah,
but
it's
we're
taking care of the trains. Over the next year or so, we're going to rehab the pedestrian bridges. We've got money set aside to rehab a lot of the stations. A lot of things are lacking in the stations. We're going to continue to work on the trains and the right of way and the windows and the cleanliness and everything. And we're going to keep going. And it's always going to keep getting better, so we can keep drawing people in. Because once you ride us once, we want you to come back and ride us again.
And speaking of, at this time last year, Dave was having our staff work on an application. And it was difficult to tell people that they needed to work on an application during the holidays, but it panned out for us.
Yes,
it panned out for
yes.
us.
We so there was a new grant. It was the first ever rolling stock replacement grant, and during the Christmas holidays last year, we were working on. I say we. There was other people working on this grant application.
Employees at Tri-Rail.
Very good people, because we were one of 6 agencies in the country. And we weren't just competing with heavy rail. We were competing with light rail, the large systems, New York, Chicago, LA, and we were granted just under $80 million for replacement rolling stock. That, coupled with funding that we've been able to put aside through the counties and through the TPAs and MPOs and TPOs, we're going to make a rolling stock purchase of almost $200 million here over the next year. Now, it takes years to get that rolling stock, so we still have to do a lot of work on what we have.
We're bringing money home.
No,
We are absolutely bringing. This is huge. I mean, this represents replacing 25% of our total fleet. Which is going to be a real game changer for us as far as being absolutely consistent.
Speaking of your rolling stock, so if I may, just because we're on the point, are you looking to kind of bring in green technology, or right now you're diesel? Is that going to, for the foreseeable future, is that really the only thing that works for commuter rail?
For the foreseeable future for us,
to go a little greener?
I think so. We'll go with a tier 4, which is cleaner than what we're burning now. Right.
And that's a requirement, by the way, of going into Miami Central.
Yeah. So, but I sit on a zero emissions committee that's nationwide as the industry starts to explore these. So, we're not going to put catenary in, because it's just not going to work with the freight railroad. So, electric is not really where it needs to be to pull our trains. Hydrogen, I rode on a hydrogen powered DMU. They're very small. It was beautiful, but it just doesn't suit our needs. But the technology is changing so quickly that it's not that it won't ever. Right. So I think that's probably a long term on the horizon, and that's why I sit on that committee. But all the rolling stock that we're going to purchase here coming up will be diesel electric.
And your rolling stock has to work on the corridors you're running on, which you don't know. Right.
Absolutely.
So you also have to be kind of flexible with what your partners require.
Right. And really, like, one of the complaints that we have from people is you don't have enough cell phone plugs, or you don't have this, or you don't have that. And we're like, well, it depends on which train you're on. We're trying our best.
Cell phones weren't a thing when these cars were first
That's
purchased.
the issue.
Yeah,
right.
cell phones were not. But phones were barely a thing when some of these cars were out here. But we're trying to work on the telegraph line between the two. But so as we are doing a project on our flooring on our cab cars, and as we do the flooring in the bathrooms on the cab cars, we are adding more outlets.
Right.
And when we get done with the cab cars, we'll move on to some of the coach cars. It's what we have to understand, this is a constant revolution of equipment that has to go in and out. And in order for us to stay consistent and stay, have a good product for our people, it has to be constant. Every 5 or 6 years, you're overhauling an engine. Yeah. You're always overhauling floors. It's just an assembly line of doing floors and bathrooms and floors and bathrooms. It gets boring after a while, but boring is good.
Yeah.
We need to be into that routine.
Right. And so the other thing that we're working on is on our 5-year plan, because, we really want to establish goals and metrics and meet those so that we can take them to our partners. So we really spent a lot of time on that, and we're excited about that and kind of deciding from an organizational point of view, right? What is it that we want to do in-house and what is it that we want to outsource? Because one of the things that we talked about, when we first met was, I just got the sense that it was kind of upside down. Right? That we really, the work that was being done, we didn't have enough people that were like railroad people. Like we were kind of running this other organization and the railroad thing was kind of like a second thought. And we were like, no, actually, we run a railroad, right?
It's the core.
That's at the core of it. So how do we, and I think the culture has changed and people understand that. I think it's come a long way.
Most definitely. And, so we have, we've hired some people. We may have hired 1 or 2 railroaders. And so culturally, we brought some railroad people with good railroad operating background into our safety department, into our track department, into our engineering department, because it does add that flavor of, that local that expertise. And then it lessens our dependence a little bit on outside consultants where you have people in-house that can take care of those things.
Right. And we're making decisions. I mean, because that's the other thing. I just felt like for a long time we were kind of like talking about making decisions. I think, this is a board
easy to punt.
Yes, this is a board that actually makes decisions.
This board makes decisions. And in my first town hall, there was a little bit of silence because I looked at the staff and I said, listen, here's one thing I want you to understand. You are not empowered to make decisions. You're expected to make decisions. This is what we do for a living. This is what we do. And if you don't want to do that, then you might,
the wrong business.
You might want to go someplace else. Yeah. And we're going to stand by you. You make a smart decision, you put some thought into it, and then they're not always right.
Right.
But sometimes you need to move things forward.
Government is so risk averse, right?
Right.
And sometimes the penalties for getting something wrong are just not worth the risk, and we need to change that throughout government. So I'm glad that you've taken that.
But you mentioned kind of like who we're appealing to, and obviously this is a commuter rail, so we want more commuters. So come on down, jump on board, get out of your car, jump on board. But another thing that we've been doing is really reaching out to families, and promoting Tri-Rail as a family option, right? So the Tri-County area has gotten so expensive. I mean, it's $100 to take your kids to the movies. It's really crazy, and we're all very aware of that, and for a very low price point, you could take your kids on the train, and you can have a wonderful time. And we've been having our family fun, events and really trying to bring the community out to these stations. What kid doesn't love a train?
Kids love trains. You don't even have to take them anywhere. The train is the destination.
Exactly. I was, and I told Dave this when I first met, my son was obsessed with Thomas the Train.
Yeah.
So yes. So I was that person. I used to take Sebas to like the train museum, and we just
Gold Coast
ride
Train
around
Museum.
the Gold Coast Train Museum by the zoo and just ride around the trains. And they have like a day out with Thomas. And the first time I took him to like a day, my kid used to have like a little man purse. I'm sorry, Sebas. It was like a lunchbox because the trains
my son already still has one.
The trains are expensive. The Thomas the Trains. He used to like put them in his overalls and lose them. So I got him like a little man purse that was like a Thomas the Train lunchbox. So he used to like take it with him everywhere. And then when he saw like the big Thomas the Train, he was like, I can't get in that. Like, what is that? It was just
like
too
when
much.
You see Santa Claus for the first time.
It was just too much.
Real.
It was just too real. But it's great to see families come out and get on the train and take the kids, and really have a wonderful time and move around our, it is a Tri-Rail community, right? So these stations really do have connectivity to a lot of wonderful places, right? So one of the things that we're doing is we did one recently at the airport. We did one in Hialeah, really trying to educate the communities about their local Tri-Rail station and how they could use it as a family.
So that's a great segue, because now people will be able to do that around a new station.
Yes.
Right. So let's talk about Miami Central. We've gone halfway into this program. We haven't talked about it. So a key project of SFRTA and of ours and of probably another 6 different, entities is what we call the Tri-Rail Downtown Link. And at some point we need probably a better name for that.
Yes.
And it's been a long time coming. It's been a lot of frustration with, the progress or lack thereof. But particularly under your leadership, we've made a ton of progress in just the past year, to the point where hopefully we'll be able to see that train roll into downtown soon. So take it away. Where are we with this?
So first, thank you, because CITT really was so important. CITT gave me like the ammunition to kind of go to Tri-Rail and be like, what is going on here? Because as you will recall, there were information that you had that our board did not have. And that was kind of, the straw that broke the camel's back at the Tri-Rail board. So, I want to thank you guys for always following up, and keeping Tri-Rail honest by having, our executive directors, and Dave has done it. I mean, and I think it's great, having them report and kind of what's happening, with Miami Central, because unfortunately the city of Miami kind of like walked away a little from it. I don't know what happened there, but, you guys really kept everyone on point. So I couldn't have gotten us to make the decisions that we did without like you guys really keeping us honest.
Well, thank you. And vice versa.
Yeah.
The report would have gone nowhere if you hadn't done something like this.
Right. So the first thing that we did was create a subcommittee, and we were like, look, rather than wait an entire month for all things Miami Central, like, let's have a committee. These people are available. They're going to make the decisions, so we did that. And then when I became the chair, they were like, just have her sign off. Dave can find her, have her sign off. So, and it was important because, this thing with Miami Central has been like every other day it's a thing. And I'll let him tell the story. But from my perspective, in terms of like the board, if we would have waited to every month to deal with Miami Central, I mean, we'd still be like 2 years behind on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is an ever evolving project, and really, to be honest, Javier, I mean, it's all anybody wants to talk to me about. So I'm really dragging it out intentionally because I'm afraid nobody's going to talk to me anymore or have nothing to say afterwards.
No, we got the coastal link.
Yeah,
I'm on it. We got the NEPA for the coastal link. Thanks to Higgins. Yeah.
It's been a challenging project. It's soon to be, I think, a very fulfilling a project. It's all, everything we do in this business, it's the railroad's a big business. They're all, but it's all relationship based. It's all who you can work with and deal with. And we have, from day one of stepping foot on the property, I've enjoyed a very good relationship with Brightline. They've been an absolute joy to deal with. FEC, we talk, weekly, if not bi-weekly. The Florida Dispatch Company, and this is how these things are getting done, is by these groups of people sitting down and trying to figure out ways to work together. So we've, the trains have been in the station.
He has the patience of Job. I gotta interrupt. He has the patience of Job. I just gotta say, this relationship is much better. But at the beginning, it was like Brightline and FEC were a divorced couple, and we were their stepchild. And I just felt like getting dragged into mom and dad's problems, right? But he has the patience of Job, and they met like every week.
Which I have never been accused of in my life.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, on this one, yes. But it took all those meetings, all those conversations, kind of figuring out like, how do we get to a compromise? Yeah. What's your issue? How can we get this done? FDOT has also been wonderful.
Just working through it all. And taking the time
working through it and working together. And sometimes, we're not going to always agree. We argue about things, we fight about things. If we leave the table and we both feel like we're upset, then that's probably the right compromise. So we've got
some
our
Chick-fil-A diplomacy.
We've qualified our crews. Our crews are qualified over the territory. We have all the positive train control up and tested, all the automatic train control up and tested. We've got the trains in the station measured, fit. Everything's good there.
The trains fit the station.
Trains fit the station.
Just reemphasize that.
Or the station fits the train. It depends on how you look at it, but it's a little bit of both.
There were moments where I was like, I'm just going to trespass.
It was. This is a great. There was both. There was issues on our side. There were issues. We all had to fix them. So we have some
design.
Very much
dynamic design. That was like the word that we heard all the time. It's a dynamic design. We're like, but does it fit in the station? Like, asking for a friend.
Yeah.
You've learned a lot in this past year, right? It's terminology.
We're hammering out some details. We're expecting some paperwork back from the FRA here very soon, probably middle of next week. And then by Christmas time, we have to run what's called simulated revenue service. And what that means is that we need to go out and demonstrate that we can run the service back and forth according to the schedule and do it safely. So, everything looks good on paper until you put it out in practice and make sure you do it. And that's why you do these practices. You don't want to do it with like live customers.
Right.
So we'll do these a few days, 3-4 days of simulated revenue service. And after that, we'll take that information and make sure that did we do what we said we were going to do? Because we spent a lot of time with the FEC and Brightline trying to mesh these schedules.
Because we share these tracks.
Yeah,
That's like what I say.
yeah.
It's like a marriage with a kid. I mean, we all live in the same space.
The FEC owns the railroad. They're the host.
And they're running their freight, which is very profitable, and they don't want to disrupt
Brightline,
that.
and then there's us.
Yeah.
And we're the third in line here for running trains.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we were able to protect the FEC's freight business, because that's crucial to the state of Florida. We also want to make sure we're protecting Brightline, because I mean, look at what they've done to transform rail, and
they've been great
now
partners.
nationwide.
Great
I mean, with big news coming now between Los Angeles and Vegas. I mean, Brightline's got an opportunity to transform rail culturally. And then we're in there, so we need to make sure we protect our customers. And it's been a lot of discussions. So we'll run this simulated service. We think we'll have that done before Christmas, and then we're going to let everybody kind of enjoy the holidays.
There's nothing that would bring more joy to me during the holidays than getting on that train. So, and then you got to wrap it.
It might be after.
It
might be after the New Year's, but I would look for short.
Then we'll wear a top hat and watch fireworks instead.
And I will take that picture.
But
I would look at very early in 2024.
That's okay.
To be able to
New
ride
train
the
in the new year.
Yes, exactly. And
Newly
we're very
wrapped
excited.
train.
Newly wrapped train. Yes, newly wrapped train. And look, for us, it's going to be transformative to get to downtown, because this opens up an entire new group of people.
Right.
And one of the things that we approved at our last meeting is an educational campaign in conjunction with FDOT, where we're going to educate all these new potential users, right, on how they can use Tri-Rail, because Brightline has really taught us all so much about marketing. They have done it so well.
Oh, they wrote the playbook. I mean, it's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. But for us, like, we're at a different price point, right? We're at a very different price point, but it can still be a wonderful experience. It's still a million times better than your car, and we can get you to all these destinations, right?
I mean, if you think about coming up here soon on a weekend for $5.
Yeah.
For $5, you can ride from West Palm Beach to downtown Miami.
Can't beat that.
$5 a person. $5.
Is that round trip?
Round all day long.
Can't beat it.
Can't beat that. Can't beat that.
And the parking here is like $50. So,
Right?
$5 is a steal.
The gas,
I'm too cheap.
the tolls, the parking, the headache, so we're excited.
Now, how exactly is it going to work? Are you doing every other train? So one to the airport, then one to downtown, or what's
No, we're
what's the
going to
plan?
run a shuttle train between Metro Transfer Station and downtown for the beginning. Okay, then we'll see.
Okay.
What I really wanted to do was protect Miami International Airport is our #1 station.
Okay.
And when I got here, that was an initial plan of running every other train. I said, now if I have to get on a train and I have to start figuring out which train I'm going to take to take my luggage to the airport, I'm just not going to take it. I'm not going to take the train.
There has to be consistency.
So right now we'll run a connection at the transfer station, and then we'll watch the ridership. Because what I would like to do is start watching those ridership patterns. I want nothing more than to put an express train on that would go from West Palm, maybe make a couple stops and go downtown, but we'll watch that ridership grow. And as we get some different equipment, because not all of my equipment can go downtown. Some of it just can't. The emissions or the
doesn't meet the requirements.
just doesn't meet the requirements.
It's
So we have to be very
stock.
careful.
Okay.
It's old rolling stock.
And so are you going to be able to time the train so that there isn't kind of a lot of waiting time in between? So you pull into, I guess,
it's going to be a very close
that
connection.
shuttle is there kind of waiting.
It's going to be a very close connection. I mean, it's 8 miles of railroad. It takes 15 minutes to get from one side to the other. So, we will time it to get out of the way. So our #1 priority is going to be to get over here and get out of the way of the FEC. Let them run their trains. So we can get over here and make that connection and transfer. And we've got some very good conversations that go on between our dispatch system and the Florida Dispatch Company, which dispatches the FEC and Brightline, so that we can time those up. And the luxury that we have is if it isn't working, we can change our schedule.
Right,
we can, and that's
So
what
we're going to respond to demands, right? We are going to respond to demand. So if you want to use the train in Miami Central, hop on board.
And
create the demands.
Create the demands, right?
Yeah. So we made a schedule change on Monday that I know some people like, some people don't like, but we did it to try to accommodate this the meshing of these trains. And if we see that that's not working, or this is not our final schedule, I can almost guarantee that we'll find something that doesn't work, or something that makes more sense. It's roughly 30-minute headways. Some of the trains have changed 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's not a lot.
Or roughly 30 throughout the day, or is that
peak? We're only allowed to run 26 trains a day on the FEC.
Right.
So that'll be the max that we can run over there. We run 50 trains a day. on our side. So we try to match those up as best we can.
And what are going to be the hours of operation?
We start like 4 in the morning,
Wow.
go
Yeah.
through. Oh yeah,
4 in the morning.
Yeah, we start like 4 in the morning and go through 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
And I'd like to put more. If I can figure out ways to fund them, I want to put more trains on, because I think we're missing a market share of people who work second and third shift.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I want to be able to capture. I want people who work in the airports second
Sure,
or third
airports,
shift
24
to be
hours.
able to take our trains. And so once I can figure out a way to pay for that, that's one of my first goals personally.
Right.
Now, I know one of the issues with Brightline when they were developing their service was I guess they call them quiet zones, right? You know, you have obviously people living along these corridors, and are you also kind of
We have
subject to quiet zones? Or
We
are
have
you
quite
gonna
a
be
few. We have quite a
pulling on the
few
horn?
quiet zones. When we get down to Miami-Dade, we don't have as many quiet zones.
Okay.
Once you get out of Miami-Dade, it's almost entirely quiet zone. And the quiet zone is an interesting thing, because it's people think a quiet zone is a rule. A quiet zone is an exception to a rule.
Right.
So when you install enough infrastructure at a crossing that makes it as safe or safer than blowing the horn, then the FRA gives you the exemption to the rule that you don't have to blow the horn. But that also cannot be confused with saying you're not allowed to blow the horn. If we see that there's an issue near the track,
Right.
somebody there, we're still going to blow the horn.
And listen, we at the beginning we talked about how Dave spent a lot of time kind of on the safety thing. Obviously, the railroad crossings, have been an issue for everyone, not
Right.
just for us. But he met with the Homeless Trust. We actually put together a meeting with the homeless advocates in Broward and in West Palm. We've been working with Brightline. We've been working with the federal government. We know that there's going to be some changes in federal regs, and that's another thing that we're spending a lot of time kind of following, because when the federal government puts out regs, they don't understand that some of us go through residential areas, right? So to his point, right, if they go the other way on that, we would be in a very difficult spot. So that's another thing that we've kind of been working through to make sure that everyone is on the same page, and that we're all kind of saying, hey, look, this is my unique, situation, and educating the communities around the trains, that you're going to see more and more trains, and you're going to have them used more and more often, and you can't outrun them.
Right.
You have to respect them, and we're seeing that it's coming through. They're starting to get it, but it's been an educational process.
It has, and if you look at nationwide, it's the places that have more trains that have fewer incidents, because people
Sure.
get used to come up and looking for them. Here you have a culture of, this was a freight track that you didn't see that many trains, and now it's seeing a whole bunch of trains.
And they typically are slow too, right?
Right.
Exactly, and
Passengers
louder,
faster.
and so you've got quieter trains now. You got trains running faster. You have more trains, but it's really, this is something that I've dealt with for 28 years now, and there's nothing more tragic than going and having an incident with a
Right.
trespasser or
But
a car.
more
And it's
reason to
just-
take your kids on the train, to explain that there are trains
Sure.
here, so we
Yeah.
really are trying to get people to start talking more about it. And not everyone can, pay for Brightline, right? So this is another option to really acclimate, your children, your teenagers to trains.
Now, given your background on the school board, where you served for many years,
6 years, yes.
is there an opportunity to partner with the Miami-Dade County Public School System to, do field trips to Tri-Rail, or for you to go to the school? Then really
That is
even
on
better.
on my list. Yes, that is on my list, as is. We're going to do some training for neurodivergent adults. So that's
Great.
on my list. That's on my
Yes,
list.
so we have that training, but we've already been engaged with Miami-Dade schools, and looking for ways. There's teachers who don't live near their schools that can maybe take the train in. There's students there's magnet schools that some students aren't able to apply to because they don't have transportation. Some of those magnet schools are near our tracks, so we're working out ways there that maybe we can.
He was
work out a
good. He
first
met with
mile,
all the
last
people.
mile.
He's even met with the universities that I've
We've
sent
met with
his way.
universities. We will.
We'll have 'em
I will.
teaching in no
I
time.
will sit down with anyone who I can talk into coming and ride our trains. So
Yes.
it's.
Yes.
And speaking of kids, I have to ask: is there a Polar Express?
Well, listen, we
It's
talked
really
about this
Next year.
We talked about this because Brightline does it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to do. Obviously there's a trademark associated, but we were looking at a Tri-Rail pajama party.
There you go.
We're looking at a version of it
Hey, I'd
that might
attend that.
work
Do I have
for-
to bring kids? Can I just? There's an adult version
See,
of this.
that's why
that
we
could
don't
be very
see.
successful.
That's why we can't have nice things.
We'll
Yeah,
talk
Miami
about
does
it.
pajamas a little
We,
different.
Yeah.
we do want to do more around the holidays next year.
Yes.
We'll see how that shapes up, but we are definitely going to do. We're going to do more than we did this year for the
Yeah.
holidays next year.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
We're
So
on it.
we don't have a whole lot of time, but I do want to give you the opportunity to talk about kind of more longer term future plans. So I think it was referenced earlier, Tri-Road Coastal Link, the Northeast Corridor.
Yeah, so shout out to
What-
Commissioner
yes.
Higgins. She got the NEPA approved for Coastal Link.
Huge.
Fort Lauderdale just had a great meeting. They're not really tied to us, but we're happy that they're looking at bridge and not tunnel because that just changes the whole dynamic. But, early on, there was a conversation about creating another entity, and we said, listen, we want Tri-Rail to be the operator, so that's like the next phase of this. We'll see what happens, but we're on board for that. And we've been communicating with our partners about it.
Yes, and we set out from day one. So because you have very smart people working, that work at Euless and Corey, and we had Clinton, in Palm Beach, really smart people making these decisions, and we offered ourselves right from the get go as a partner. Like, listen, we're here to partner. I have 28 years of doing this.
Yeah.
Any bit of my expertise that we can lend, we can. Obviously, we want to be the operator. If we're selected for the operator, we think we'll do a fantastic job. If we're not, we're still a partner. I think the goal here is for the people of South Florida to benefit, and the more options they have to travel, the better that is. If we can help with that, we're here. We're absolutely.
And you know that the Coastal Link, the issue is the price point. So one of the things that we told our partners is, why are you going to create another entity? You're just going to create more costs, and you're just going to drive up the price. It's more layers of bureaucracy. So SFRTA, can do a lot of things. We can do this, in our separate role. And then obviously, his work with CSX is very important because, as you know, on the TPO, we're talking to CSX about potentially going down south and extending the east-west. So, I mean, this is a great time, to be involved. The stars are aligning to be involved with trains. One of the difficult things for us on the county side is the easements and the access. So, these existing lines really provide us with an opportunity. I've been pushing to start with freight, and then we'll have the conversation about passenger and double track. We'll see what happens. But obviously, I have full faith in Tri-Rail. And I think that we've shown our Tri-County partners that they can rely on us and that we can get things done.
Absolutely. And there are great things coming down the tracks. I love all the railroad puns. We could do them, all day long. But listen, we're out of time,
keeping us on track.
Yes, he's keeping us on track. He's a freight train. I mean,
keep going. We'll derail the conversation. I can do this all day. Come on.
and with that, this program has to come to its terminus. And just had one last one. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Pulling the train into the station.
Pulling
Bye-bye,
it into
folks.
the station.
Yeah.
And it fits.
We hope you enjoyed your ride. Please place your train. No, we'll stop. But listen, I want to thank you all for being here and for everything you've done. A tremendous amount of progress in such a short period of time. And it's largely because of the two of you working in partnership. So thank you on behalf of the CITT and on behalf of the entire community. And we'll have you on, I guess, once service starts. And
see you very soon.
Talk about how it's going.
Yes.
And I look forward to the fireworks during the launch event in the new year.
Yes. And we hope that everybody gets out of their car and jumps on the train.
And bring your kids along with you.
Bring your kids with you.
Folks, that's all the time we have here on Mobility Matters. We want to thank you for joining us. We also want to thank our partners in this endeavor, community newspapers, for hosting us in this beautiful space and producing the program. You can find us here every other Thursday from 9 to 10 a.m. for more great discussions on mobility and transportation. And we'll see you then. Take care. And thank you, guys.